I gotta talk to my phone. Hey guys, we are Just Janky. As you can see, we've changed things a little bit. We're now two dudes who don't take each other very seriously. And I need to do this all over again. Remember the first time we did the podcast? I felt all nervous.
Bro, chill. It's just me and you.
I know.
It's just me and you, John. It's just me and you. I wish that we could hear each other.
That would be cool. Like a headset. Dude, so what if we did Bluetooth and then we had...
I'd be like, John.
Do you have AirPods?
John.
We switched to AirPods?
Yeah, but you wouldn't hear it because it's just me talking. You would need a mic.
No, I get what you're saying. It'd be like a phone call.
That's the next setup, though, so that I can be like, John.
I hear you
John.
in my ear. That's fun.
John, I love you.
Okay. We're Just Janky. We're two dudes who don't take anything very seriously, but yet we talk about serious topics. We've changed our setup a little bit. We're no longer three dudes, but two dudes. We're not on a Zoom call anymore. We're now social distancing and hanging out, having some drinks. I'm drinking an IPA, Lagunitas IPA, and then my buddy Mark Schaup here is drinking...
I got a glass full of urine. Just kidding. I got a glass of some cheap Moscato barefoot wine. Nice. Ideal.
That's good stuff. Which you've gotten me hooked on lately.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the good stuff.
So I'll explain what John was trying to say in more detail.
Right, because the perfectionist over here needs to...
So there's this little thing called the coronavirus that's going around, and that's why we started the podcast online on Zoom.
In case you didn't know or you lived under a rock.
That we had a podcast going? Or that coronavirus
the world is on fire, dude.
I was like, bro, we got 20 followers. What do you mean?
I know. I think that's overstepping. Do we actually have 20 followers?
No, we get 20 views regularly. We'll see.
That's cool.
We also took a couple weeks off, so it may just drop to 5.
Right, it might have dropped, yeah.
Yep.
Like
so
9.
Anyway, we moved to online. We're at a point in the country where I think we've plateaued a little bit. Although with recent events, we'll see if that spike happens a little bit. But
right.
John and I were at a point, and our families are at a point where we had the conversation. We're like, okay, cool. You can start meeting in backyards, that kind of thing, as long as you're social distancing. So that's what we're doing. As you know, our podcast used to be 3 people. If you've been following it, if this is your first time tuning in, you're like, this is a lovely setup. But Aiden,
and if you're Bo Flores, who decides to flame our podcast behind our backs...
Wait, did you say it or did JoJo say it?
Huh?
Did JoJo say it?
JoJo told us.
That's hilarious.
JoJo ratted Bo out.
Yep.
In front of the entire friggin' CA staff.
Which I actually overthink a little bit. Gets
you
in my head
overthink
a
about
little bit.
what?
Knowing that Bo
he's a boomer. Who cares, dude?
Okay, don't call Bo a boomer. Bo's cool.
He's cool, but he's not our demographic necessarily.
But that's a good. That's
he's cool. But
it's a better way of saying it. Better way of saying it. Oh yeah. So Aiden kind of work has just been picking up like crazy as they've tried to move everything online as well with the church, doing online services and that kind of stuff. His work has just kind of really taken over, and so this podcast was becoming less fun and more of like another thing to add to his list. And so we were like, bro, we want this to be fun, so scale back. We don't know if that's a for sure thing, but we're going to kind of keep that posted. But for now, it's just John and I, and we're going to see where it takes us.
We're also thinking about like the future of the podcast, if Just Janky is the name we want to keep.
Yep.
I mean, kind of everything's been up in the air, so...
So this is the Just Janky ? Episode?
Yeah, I know. As you can see, is Just Janky doesn't look that janky. I mean,
yeah, we're
both looking pretty freaking fly.
We decided to step it up, be in person, all that stuff. John is going to throw some real editing at this thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the other reasons that we also... I had 3 points. My third point is one of the other reasons that we decided to kind of take a couple weeks off was, A, let us kind of gather our thoughts. B, crazy stuff is happening in this country. Our country's finally kind of waking up to the fact that we are in a country that's racially divided. A couple weeks ago, I guess this is like if you're living under a rock.
Right, right.
A black man named George Floyd was killed by a police officer who had his knee on his neck for 9 minutes long. And that sparked a week of protesting and uprising and social media awareness and just general increase in the social expectation, I would say. And that's
a lot
still
of guns pointed at people's heads, metaphorically, and maybe
and
literally,
a little literally
too,
So,
at least in LA.
Anyway, that's just kind of a quick recap. Most people are aware of this happening. But John and I wanted to be careful. There were a lot of very well-educated and black people who kind of had an understanding of what needed to be sent out in the world, and John and I did not want to clog up those airwaves, even though there's only 20 listeners. We wanted to be clear that use our social media to echo their voices, but also not spread our own voice as white passing people. But that said, we also wanted to come back around and say, white people, your voice is just as important in this conversation, and you need to be actively anti-racist. And so here we are, contributing our piece to this racial conversation that exists today. Did I miss anything? Oh,
yeah, you did miss something.
The caveat.
We're dumbasses. I'll say it for him.
We are uncertified.
We don't. Yeah.
I'm kind of educated.
You're much more. Okay, Mark is way further.
I don't want to call myself uneducated.
Mark is more woke than I am.
I don't want to call myself.
That's the word.
I don't want to call myself uneducated. But there are. We'll put it this way.
You're more experienced in this conversation.
Sure. But there are so many black people out there that I would highly recommend that you listen to ahead of me. So if you're just joining this conversation of kind of racial awareness that's happening in this country and the racial conflict that's happening in this country, please don't listen to us first.
Yeah.
We will link resources in the bio below. We will link petitions to sign. We will link websites to go educate yourself. We will link organizations to donate to. There are hundreds of things better, but if you find yourself on our podcast, we did want to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, and a lot of this conversation is going to be about what I think at least from my side, what I've learned just shutting up and listening, and there's some been really cool voices to listen to, really educational podcasts that I listen to, like a really good podcast that I would suggest, this guy named Joseph Solomon, a Christian guy who he's all about flights and travel and stuff like that, but he also talks about some really deep stuff, and he has a podcast where he talks about some of this stuff, and his opinion on this is really interesting. I really appreciated listening to that. So yeah, resources like that we've listened to that are interesting, we're probably going to throw in the bio, but yeah, we just want to say that because we're not at all saying that we're super qualified.
Yeah,
but
this is I think recognize that we're going to be educating, but it's kind of going to be on a personal scale of how do you as a person go through this process of racial awareness, particularly in yourself, and then how do you turn that back and kind of reconcile with what's going on in the world around us? Because the world's freaking broken. All you got to do is turn on the news.
It's on fire.
But yeah, please don't reference us as examples or educators or anything. There are so many people. The one that I've been following currently is Angela Davis, who's been doing this work for 40 years.
Nice.
She's been calling for this stuff for 40 years. So I'm just but to be I'm an educator, and then to see that she's in the arena is nope, not even close.
No, I hear you.
Close. But that said, one of the other things that John and I think hold really close to our hearts in all of this is that there's a big culture out there of super critical, trying to really correct people quickly, especially on social media. It's kind of if you say the wrong thing,
the thought police.
The what?
Thought police. Not THOT.
As in good correction. The thought police.
Yeah.
But I think that that can kind of, while I get this sense of you want to educate people, I do think that there can be a little bit of that hand slaps people who are genuinely looking to learn, and it can be okay, I don't want to engage this anymore.
Yeah.
And so one of the caveats that John and I approach this conversation with is grace. By no means are we the most educated in any means, and we would love to hear input, hear things that, you're pointing out stuff within our knowledge because we're not perfect by any means and are always looking to learn. But we just ask that you do it with grace. And you'll see a little bit of that with me and John, even of me being oh, hey, the right term is this. Or, I understand what you're trying to say. The better way to say it is this. Or,
right.
By the way, this has been going on for 400 years, John.
Right.
Which he doesn't think that, or he doesn't need to learn that. But that's kind of the, I think,
examples.
Like, we're going to try to also be exemplifying how you engage this conversation with passion, because it's really important, but also with grace for the fact that we're human and we're all mistaken. And even those people who are out, like, being the thought police on social media and that kind of thing, there's somebody who knows more than them too.
Right.
And so it's really important to, as even you're correcting other people, recognize, but I'm also needing to learn still too. Yeah. It's a constant process of learning. Right. So that's just kind of the ground rule that I said is have grace for people, even as people engage the content with us, you know, recognize everybody's at a different place in the journey. And so I think that's one of the things that I see kind of missing in the process is grace for people as they are really interested in learning, but, you know, a couple steps behind. You got to learn the lingo and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think the overarching thing for all of this, and Jesus was ahead of the game before any of us were. Like, all of this stuff that we're learning right now is, I'm seeing more and more, we're like grace. Like, where did we learn grace from? You know what I'm saying? Like, so.
Or for our biblical people out there, he said, go to Samaria. He said, walk through the world and go visit Samaria, and people were not willing to do that.
Right.
Or the Good Samaritan. Who were the people that crossed the street and there was a dude bleeding out on the ground and he said, nope, I'm going to the other side of the street?
Totally.
Those were the religious people. So I think that we have to underlie this conversation completely by seeing the way that the church has been silent in this country.
Yeah.
There's so many people in this country that have been silent. And not even to get into the fact that our president calls himself a Christian, so. We won't even go there.
Don't hold a book you haven't even read, my guy. Don't even.
What'd you say?
Don't hold a book you haven't even read like that, dude. Like, bro.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my God. I didn't mean to go there. Anyway, so that's kind of the way that we're approaching this conversation. But as I said, we're going to underlie it with personal stories. So we're going to start with John.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just trying to exemplify, like, how you can have these conversations with people because it can feel freaking daunting. It's like...
It is, yeah.
Hey, buddy, you're racist.
Right.
That's
Which
not
I'm okay with it. Like,
sure.
Yeah, I probably am a little bit racist. Maybe a lot.
And
of
I think that's the
Who
thing.
knows?
I
I'm
think
learning.
that's the thing to recognize is like we're all racist. We're all biased. We're all prejudiced in some way or the other. Even the people who are doing the work, I have to realize like I am actively the only way to not be racist is to actively be anti-racist and be assessing that within myself.
Right. Yeah.
So that was another point that I was going to make. But anyway, we're going to take it back to the beginning. Mm-hmm. John, tell us about your ethnic background, your racial background.
So I actually came out yellow because I had this thing called jaundice where like you had a lack of vitamin D in your skin. So I'm not kidding. I was literally the color yellow.
He was actually yellow. It's not a.
I'm not making a joke. I would not make that kind of joke. I've learned in my life.
I did have to.
You had to flame me. Dude, I
did have to tell John, buddy. That's
I'll
not
preface this by saying that I've been on the wrong side of this for probably a while, and maybe in the past, as my friendship with Mark has evolved, has grown, I've learned more and more about kind of what it means to be racist and what, injustices there are and how it hurt, how would I say affects people. So anyway, my legitimate thing that I'm saying is I was yellow and I had jaundice.
Because you had jaundice.
Because I had jaundice, yeah. And then my parents stuck me on the window, pretty much just baking in the sun so I could become white. I'm dead serious, dog. And yet I'm the whitest in my family. Born
to become white. Oh my God, John.
What?
It just sounds so. I know you were literally trying to
tan as a baby, right?
But if you haven't heard of jaundice, it's crazy. You need to go Google images of like babies with jaundice
before you're like,
because
I can hear the keyboards going off.
They have like ultraviolet lights that they put babies under these days. It's crazy.
Wow, dude.
Yeah, Taylor's nephew had jaundice, and so he had to like. They have like special goggles that they put on the babies.
Oh, wow.
And then they put them under this ultraviolet light, and so that just their eyes are protected. It's crazy, bro.
That's so fancy. My parents just sat me in a chair in front of the window. I was this little baby, like, baking in the sun.
So anyway.
Okay,
besides jaundice.
Born and raised in Pasadena. My mother's from Georgia.
She's white.
The state Georgia. And she's white. With some... family roots going through, I'll admit, like, my family was on the Confederate side of the Civil War, but also tracking it all the way to the Mayflower. There was a Waller apparently on the Mayflower. So I haven't done the whole Ancestry.com thing, but I'm white nonetheless on one side. And on the other side, I have my dad's from South America, a country called Paraguay, where he kind of came back and forth, very Americanized throughout his childhood, kind of on and off of like, you know, he was telling me stories of how the white kids would make fun of him when he pronounced it Paraguay instead of Paraguay. And when he'd say Paraguay, they'd be like, oh, okay. And so, like, him having to learn all that stuff. So, like, my dad is... if you talk to him on the phone, you'd think he's a white guy. Genuinely. So, but, nonetheless, he is dark. And,
Dark-skinned.
My dad is dark-skinned. When I was a kid,
all the grace for you, John, but that's
I mean, yeah, I know, but it's my dad. All right, for sure. My dad jokes about it much more than I do.
I know where it comes from.
So, yeah, I mean, growing up in very suburban areas, very safe areas. Don't go to Highland Park. Don't go to Eagle Rock back then.
That's my neighborhood.
That's the hood.
Oh, wait, we shouldn't be giving out our location.
Yeah, here's his address. He lives right next to USC.
What?
I'm screwing with him.
USC.
Yeah, so let me think. I never really...
Okay, I have questions to direct you then.
Great.
So did your parents raise you and talk about the fact that you were biracial, or were you kind of...
I thought it was normal to have parents that were just like two different colors or two different ethnic backgrounds or all that stuff. Like, that was just part of, you know... it was weird for me to see...
But they didn't, like, actively talk about it?
No. Like, your dad's South American... I mean, they did, but they talked about it so much that it was, like, normal to me. They didn't express...
Okay, totally.
They expressed it so often that they didn't tell me what the normal was, which is usually people of the same ethnicity. It's more common for people of the same ethnicity to be married and have kids. So, yeah, I also didn't realize neither of them are biracial, so neither of them really could have that conversation with me about how, like, hey, you're not really going to fit in with either race, to be honest with you. And, yeah, what about you? You're
just going to ask you one more question quickly.
That's fine, and I just do want to hear your story.
Yeah. When did you realize that your dad was a person of color?
I still haven't realized it.
Were you today years old?
I still haven't realized it, dude. My dad, it's weird when it's your parents. Like,
I mean, because he probably didn't talk about it.
No,
he probably was not
just
self-aware of it, and he probably is not self-aware of it today. Like, because if you think about
situationally,
my dad has gotten
through life as a white guy. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, talking to him, my dad hasn't had an easy life. I'll be honest with you, but I don't think. I mean, I take that back. His time in America was pretty hard.
Yeah.
He did get, like, he was telling me a story about in high school how there was mostly white kids what state is Pittsburgh in?
Why are you doing this, John?
I forgot. Because that's where my dad lived. It was in that same state. You're a monkey.
Bro, why'd you just out all California?
I don't know.
Honestly, the real fact, and this is something that I've gotten, like, traveling, is that Californians, like, our entire geography is California. Like, and especially when it comes to the East Coast, bro, you're like...
What? Why are there all these, like, tiny little...
There's some states over
all
there.
All that stuff. It's New York.
My friend is from Maryland, and I had to genuinely be like, I don't know which one that is. I know it's kind of over there.
Maine, New York.
I'm not even going to answer your
Florida.
question because I would rather not get flamed.
Okay.
Because you know that Tom Hughes is from Pittsburgh.
Right. I doubt he watches this.
No, there's no way he watches it, but I'm just like...
Right.
That shows how much I don't.
Anyways.
I just know what football team they have.
So wherever the Steelers, whatever state that is, that's where my dad went to school in America, and he was one of the only people of color at that school, and so he made friends with the black kids, and he had these two buddies who, one guy was a break dancer, the other guy liked making music, and then they both started break dancing, and that was actually the beginning of my dad's dance career. Okay, so this is the part of the podcast where it's janky. Just to remind you that it's just janky. I don't even need to
the
look
image
at
is no longer moving.
Yeah, the image is no longer moving. You've noticed. I'll cut this at the part where the footage just cuts out.
No problem. We're all good.
But yeah, you're gonna probably be looking at a still image of me and Mark just chilling
Smiling
and pretending
chilling
like
in the
we're pretend like we're talking or something.
No problem.
But
so take it back to where you were.
This just became an audio only podcast, which I'm sure you guys got bored of looking at our faces at a certain point. What was the question? I forgot what we were talking about.
It just was like, when did your dad? When did you realize that your dad was a person of color?
He's never like expressed
Totally.
any sort of like oppression or what's the word? Like someone saying, "Oh, you're."
I mean, I think your
guy of
dad.
color.
I think your dad
I'm sus.
from like from just like a like an authentic point of view. I think your dad probably carries himself in like a way that's colorblind.
Yeah,
Which is like we're all
very
equal.
much so.
We're all like, and the point of colorblindness is to communicate. We're all good. We're all equal. And what it overlooks is the injustice.
Right.
It overlooks the fact that our country puts people on different levels depending on the color of their skin only.
Right.
And I totally.
That's
I mean,
accurate.
that's something to
It's
realize.
hard to determine that from a first person perspective.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that your dad probably came from a position where he was like, I'm just going to make it.
Bingo.
I'm just going to make it.
Yeah.
I don't care what it takes.
And that's the kind of guy
stuff.
my dad is. Like, he's like, nothing's going to stop
And that
me.
kind of person is really hard. It's hard for them to look at and be like, yeah, there's injustice in this world.
Yeah.
I faced it hard.
Definitely. And, you know, asking him, like, as a Latin guy, were you ever, like, not given a job or a loan or whatever kind of, injustices? And my dad never really, I don't think, experienced that. Those conversations have been brief because he doesn't really have much to talk about.
Yeah, so I can counter that experience. not that we're playing the comparison game.
No, go ahead.
But I am half Korean, half white. We've mentioned this on the podcast before, but just catching people up. My mom is Korean, my dad is white. My mom is first generation, so she moved here when she was 4, and grew up kind of in a system, and it was in the time when people were very aware of the fact, particularly like my grandmother, my Haimanim, my Korean grandmother, wanted her kids to appear white, wanted her kids to appear American, and there was a huge wave of, oh my gosh, what is the word when you're trying to become American?
Whitewash?
Nope. Well,
that is a term.
Yeah, but it's
that's more like.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, there's a word. Well, I'm gonna get corrected for it, but it's like that you're trying to become American. You're trying to be as American as possible, even though you're
Gentrify?
from.
No,
No, but that's the word I came up with too.
Yeah.
We're having too much to drink.
You're the lightweight. Come on.
Yeah, we've been over this. I don't have to drive. But anyway, so grew up in the system. Lost a lot of her Korean as a result. She kind of speaks broken Korean today. And from day one as a kid, I was aware of the fact that my mom was a person of color. Like, talked about it and saw it. Like, I think there's like a very different way that black people are treated in this country versus Asian people. Black people are like actively antagonized and Asian people are just overlooked. So the whole saying is that Asian people are the model minority because they don't get in trouble, they get good grades, they want to be successful, and by all accounts of the word, you're like, you achieved the American dream. But you still face lots of oppression in the fact that you are overlooked.
Can I throw a comment that a friend of mine made that threw me off? That I had no comment. It shocked me, but I'm curious on what your thought is, considering what you've just said. We were driving through a neighborhood. I'm not going to name which neighborhood, but all of these houses, they were rich people, like richer than any of the white people around. He's like, look at all these Asian houses. Like, how can you say that there's, social injustice and that, black people are oppressed when, like, all these, that white people are the bad guys when all these Asians, are so rich and stuff.
So, I mean, it's like, there's always success stories.
Right.
Like, even in this country, you see black people who succeed, and to judge a race on a select group of people that have quote unquote succeeded is completely unfair.
Yeah.
Because in the same way, I mean, we had the you had the Japanese internment camps, for one example, of, like, ways that people in this country were oppressed, Asian people in this country were oppressed.
Yeah.
Like, during World War II, actively Japanese people were put into internment camps. But we don't talk about that. We talk about the Holocaust. But it's like, no, we were put in... We as Americans put another race in, like, labor camps.
Yeah.
We can talk about that? No, not really.
Right.
So it's like, okay, cool.
And the fact that, I mean, I hate to... It's the truth, but people will throw you into a big old net that's just Asian.
Yeah.
So that kind of issue definitely very directly affects you, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the hard part is, like, but if you look at the situation, Asian people are, like, more passive so that they're more accepted in the system today. They don't rebel as much. They don't protest as much. And that's something that I, as an Asian American, have to push back against to say, no, like, we have to stand with our brothers and sisters that are people of color because this system affects all of us, even if you're saying, like, oh, as an Asian American, I can get by. I can get that Asian home. I can be successful. It's like, well, yeah, but you still face oppression. Like, the number of times that I was in a grocery store and that my mom was in line and they started serving the person behind us because my mom is Asian and my mom's a woman was just crazy.
Are you serious?
Just unseen. And that's the reality of the situation is that there's the, like, all of this stuff that's going on with black people is very, not physical, but violent is the word that you might say. And all of the stuff with Asians is just under the table. There are so many slights. The whole, like, can Asian people drive? Asian people are good at math. It's these stuff that's, like, you know, on the top level, you're like, yeah, Asian people are good at math. Asian people are, like, get rich. It's like, yes, but what are you saying underneath the table, you know, about all of that? Right. What is that stereotype doing for us?
What are the things you don't see? Because I've never, I mean, you were telling me that story and I've never, I mean, having a white mom, I never would see that.
Yeah.
So, like, there's also the unseen things of, like,
I mean, and the hard part is that there's also the intersectionality of race and gender. So my mom was overlooked not just because she was Asian, but also because she was Korean.
Right.
Sorry. She's Asian and she's a woman.
Right.
And so it's something that's very real. But anyway.
Which I feel like is probably a whole another conversation.
Totally. I'm going to be marrying a very strong woman. What does that look like, you know? In lots of scenarios, she is more equipped than me as the man. But people will talk to me, and I'm like, why are you talking to me?
Right.
She's the one that knows everything. Are you dumb? Like, you think that I'm the one that's going to be giving this speech? Okay, funny joke. You know, but, like, that's so real, is that they will look to us because of the stereotypes that we have. Anyway, that's a whole different tangent.
Right.
So anyway, to circle back around, my dad's white, and he's, like, third or fourth generation from Germany, that kind of thing. Anyway, what I was just saying is, born and raised, I was very aware of the fact that I was biracial. And my parents talked about it all the time, and they wanted to make us aware of it, that we were half of one thing and half of another, but an entirely whole as a biracial person. And something we've actually talked about is the fact that, like, you kind of are not fully known as a biracial person unless you're with other biracial people.
Right.
Because it's not actually, like, when I'm with Koreans, I'm not Korean enough. And when I'm with white people, I'm not white enough. I'm always seen as the other, you know? And it's really fascinating, but the place where I feel the most seen are with people who are also half of, or are also mixed, because they are aware of the fact of, like, not ever fully being present. So I think one of the things that's, like, one of the blessings in disguise about marrying Taylor is that she is also biracial, and so we get that.
Oh, right.
We don't share, I mean, we share being white, but we don't share our cultures of color, and that is, like, super powerful for us because I know I'm known for that, you know?
Especially with biracial kids, it doesn't matter your mix.
Because you're mixed.
A mutt's a mutt, yeah, you know? And that's really what I'm one of them, so I can say that. I can say it.
Yes, but mutts is a derogatory term.
I didn't mean it that way.
I know, but I'm just saying, it's a negative term.
Right, yeah.
So you don't want to call mixed people mutts.
But mutts are cute. Puppy dogs that are mutts, come on. It's almost like a compliment.
Let me put it this way. Mixed babies slap.
Oh, yeah.
There's no such thing as an ugly mixed baby.
Hoppas are Bro, if you were a chick, you'd be fired.
Oh my god. All right. So getting us back on track after calling mixed people mutts. My second question was, okay, so when did you first experience injustice? Like, when did you see, so your dad, your parents kind of raised you to see this,
Yeah.
the playing field was flat? When did you realize it was stacked? There were people who were ahead and there were people
It wasn't
who were
until
not.
I was homeschooled all my life, and I had the really cool opportunity of having parents that were both culturally, I've traveled the world. Like, I've visited different cultures, and my parents weren't just like the white people who just went to the touristy parts. Like, I studied these different cultures and went to these places, and so I wasn't the atypical, like, America, what's outside of America? You know, like, I actually went to these places. So a lot of what I saw was difficult to understand because I had been to so many different countries and things. Every time you go to a different country, there's a different kind of racism. And I was learning about this in school. There's a high context interaction and a low context interaction. A low context interaction is a wave. It does not
Lift your...
Yeah. A low context interaction is a wave. You understand that this is greetings, right? Pretty much anybody knows that this is greetings. But if I say, like, yo, this track is fat, dude. Like, people don't speak my language, don't get it. People who are not in my age range don't get it. And even some people not in my age range who aren't necessarily from Los Angeles don't understand that I mean PHAT, and that's a good thing. You know what I'm saying? That's like high context. You have to understand the cultural.
When you're talking about a track, are you saying like track and field, the thing you run around?
No, like a mixtape, like music. Yeah, okay, see, like that too. Like, dude, it just happened. It literally just happened. Grandpa totally just thought I was talking about us. Is it like a track and field? Okay, so see, like that was a great example because when you go to these different countries,
not staged.
Right, it wasn't staged at all. High context racism is very high context in oppression is very high context in these other countries of like some of these things. It's like they like, I mean, going to another country, they all look very familiar, but they can notice the difference with you're Sicilian and you're Greek. Like, I can't see that yet.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, Salvadorians hate, I think it's people from Mexico. Salvadorians hate Mexicans. I don't get that. That's a high context, you know, understanding. So I've literally been on sub 30, maybe over 20, no, definitely over 20 cruises in my life and trips. So I've been in a lot of different countries. So I've never really gotten to, you know, it's almost like I was
That makes you
relearning.
sound posh. Let's just clarify that your parents were working.
No, they
on
barely
this.
made. They worked on the ship so that, and we came off the ship making zero, like net zero, like they.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
No, it's fine. I'm glad you. My parents are dance instructors. They traveled the world, which was cool. But the reason they taught dance was so that they could take us on these really cool experiences. So they were working all day while me and my sister were hitting the buffet and going to checking out Greece and
Day
stuff.
camp.
Right, day camp and checking out. Yeah, and so, but we would get off that ship on net zero, and so yeah. Yeah, so anyways, it was harder.
Can I shift
trying
your
to come back.
Can I shift your okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to come
Go
back.
ahead.
In terms of American like injustice, like
You read my mind.
I didn't really fully understand it until I think the best example that I can clearly remember was when I went to Boys and Girls Club. I don't know if you remember that after school program. It's like almost like YMCA, but specifically for, I think, middle school and under kids. And it was very diverse. Like, I was like the only white kid there. And the topics and conversations were brought up about things that I didn't understand. And I began to realize that people looked at me in a way that was different. That was not, I wasn't oppressed. I'm not going to say I was oppressed. but I was the white kid.
But you are, and this is something we can talk about later, but you are a person of color. I am a person of color.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
You're a white passing person of color. Did you know that? Oh.
Bro, I tanned yesterday and I look red now. So
No, I know, but
I am
the thing is,
definitely
here's the
colored.
thing. Being a person of color is not a definition of your skin, or it's not defined by your skin color, because there are white passing, half white, half black people.
Is it an ethnic thing?
I mean, it's your cultural background.
Okay.
Like, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Like, you are half
Latin.
and therefore you are a person of color. Like, Taylor is half Puerto Rican, but she looks like a super white girl. And we talk about this all the time, right? Like, she's super white passing. But she, like, if you put her and her sister next to each other, twins, no less, one looks Hispanic, the other does not. And she's treated very differently in scenarios for that reason. And, like, one of the other things that she had to go through was, like, can I apply for this Hispanic scholarship? Like, does it apply?
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, yes, your ethnic background is Hispanic, you know? Like, you own that, you know? So I think you should like, feel that of, like, yes, I am a white person. I am a person of color. And so that makes your biracial stuff just... And it's intended... I mean, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to wrestle with that mix.
It's so...
Right?
It's weird. Yeah, it's
you
very
hate it.
uncomfortable.
So don't say you're not oppressed.
Okay.
I mean, the other thing is there are degrees of oppression in this country.
Right.
Certainly. And Latin people, Hispanic people, and Asian people are not oppressed in the same way as black people. But this conversation can make it feel like, oh, I can't even interject in this, you know?
Right. I get you.
But as we said before, this is a personal... we're more focused on the personal stuff.
I'm an idiot.
How do we engage this as people, and then interact with the national movement of Black Lives Matter, you know?
You're cranking through that, buddy.
I know, dude. Keep going. First time you experienced depression was in this class, Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, and I mean, I understood that there was something. People were treated differently because of the color of their skin. I obviously, from a young age, learned about slavery and the Civil War, and even going before. Like ancient, injustices and oppressions and stuff like that. So I learned about this stuff. It wasn't like I was completely colorblind, but colorblindness was the answer, and so I really had to look and understand that when this is something, part of my past I'm not proud of necessarily, and I would have handled differently. I had neighbors I had my two best friends growing up. One was a Latin kid. I feel like he was, I don't want to say he was Mexican in case he was Salvadorian, but I get the two mixed up all the time, and I know they get so
He was
pissed.
Hispanic.
He's Hispanic.
He was South American.
Yeah, that's different. Mexicans and South Americans are Hispanic, and so is people from Spain, I think. Someone correct me about the Spain one. I'm pretty damn sure about that.
But I'm saying that they're South American. That's correct, right? I guess he's Central American.
Central American would be, I think.
Excuse me for grouping. I just I'm getting...
A-hole? What the heck, dude? I'm gonna throw up.
I'm getting flamed now.
It's okay.
We're all human. We're all made mistakes. We're all a little racist.
My next door neighbor. So, two best friends, Latin kid, and for sure he was Vietnamese. Both of his parents were Vietnamese.
And sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on the time.
You're fine. No, you're fine. And then there was a kid across the street who's a black kid, and we all four would play. And then suddenly, this kid's whole family was black. Like, he had them all over and stuff. And suddenly we stopped hanging out with him when there was an interaction where a car skids into the driveway, and 5 cop cars are in tow. And suddenly you hear, like the megaphone, like, get out, like, put your hands up, get out of the car. I don't know what cops say, and then you see this big cop, like, pop open the trunk and pull out a shotgun, and I'm watching out the window, and this was a black cop, which was interesting to, like, considering now the conversation. Not to say anything, I'm not, I don't know, I don't want to get, yeah. But
the ethnicity of the cop doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay, then I don't know why I brought it up. But anyway, pops open the trunk, big ass shotgun, and then my dad's like, get to the back of the house. And my parents freaked out. Anyway, from that point on, instead of like trying to understand what happened, because this guy, I was buddies with this kid. He was a nice guy. And I went over to their house frequently, and I would never in a billion years guess that they would have any sort of interaction like this. Years later, I went over and I wanted to see how he was doing. Turns out it was a, like, uncle, like a somewhat distant relative who, like, knew that they lived there and wanted to find a safe place to, get away from the cops, and brought all this heat to their house. And, like, the family had no affiliation. If anything, they were just trying to, they were like, don't come inside. No. We haven't seen you in forever, kind of thing. So anyways, my mom was definitely like, I remember her lying and saying like, oh no, the kids aren't home. They can't play right now. And I even from that age, I felt like, I feel bad. This feels weird. Like, I wish I could see it. Like, so so your family did it. I think that's where I noticed it the most, was when my family, because you saw it from the inside.
That's next level, bro.
Yeah, dude. And so that's a story that's gonna stick with me it's stuck with me for a long time. I think is going to stick with me.
That's when you tell your kids.
Yeah, and I remember like not too long ago, a couple of years ago, I was outside playing soccer, and I was just kicking the ball around by myself. He's like, "Hey, can I play with you?" And I was like, yeah, dude, of course. And then we just talked, and he was a normal. It was. I don't want to say his name. I don't want to out the guy, but like, he was just the way he was when he was younger. Nothing had changed. Like, he was a solid dude, and that is the one I remember the most, and probably the first time I realized it, and it sticks with me so much because I feel so bad, and I wish I would have continued to be friends with him. It makes me really sad. So. Yeah.
Can I, in grace, point out something even in your story that shows, like, inherently how we judge black people in this country?
Yeah.
Like you were saying, he's a normal kid. Like, we even have to throw a caveat on black people to say nobody's normal.
Right.
Like there is a level of you're under, and you have to work your way back up to be like, you're normal. No. That kid's good.
Totally.
Like, we judge the entire group of people, and we say, nah, each of you have to work your way up to be like, nah, you're normal. No, he's good.
If it was just you and me, I think, and if you and me were the only ones part of this conversation, I think I would have said it differently.
Totally.
But I feel like when I'm talking about that story, I feel like my mom is somewhere nearby or listening. You know? I don't know why, but I feel like I'm also almost explaining. So it's like speaking in her terms.
Yeah,
I love my mom, and
totally.
She's trying her best to understand this, but she comes from a different generation.
Yeah,
and
I mean, she comes from the South. Even that is like a different cultural than us, yeah.
And conversations with her around what's been going on lately have been tense, because, I'm starting to understand these things.
We look at where the slavery divide was drawn.
Right.
And it was North versus South.
Yeah.
Like, if you trace it back then, you're like, okay, it makes sense.
Yeah.
We're still trying to undo a lot of that.
But I appreciate you calling that out. And
it's not to call you out.
No,
it's just to point. Like, it's in our language,
didn't
bro.
Even realize it, yeah.
Like, it's in the way we talk. No, he's normal.
Right.
No, he's good. Like, we do that. And it's not, I hope you don't feel called out by it. I'm saying, like, we all do it.
In a good way, I do.
It's just to point it. It's just to say, like...
Yeah, no, I get you. And my curiosity is, like, what do you do in those kind of situations when there are people who are, like, who they're definitely, like, tense because of the guy, they're being racist. Because they're definitely tense. And I have to communicate, like, no, he's chill, like, relax. Like, he's a normal dude, like... What do you say in that moment? You know what I'm saying?
So I actually... Yeah. So I saw a really interesting video that was, like, in response to this idea of, like, you're sitting around a table, bunch of white people, and you're talking about, like, blah, 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 black people being racist as a group. The role of that is not to say, that's bad. It's to say, how do we as a group allow us to start talking about a group of people differently? It's not a black people issue, it's a white person issue. Like, there's something wrong in us that feels okay to be like, an entire group of people's not normal until we say they're normal. Right? You have to vouch for this guy. So, I mean,
So in that scenario, do I just shut up?
I mean, there's like a lot of racist people out there that it's like hard, you know.
Yeah,
but
I
like
know.
even just to be like, why are you bagging? The problem is us. The problem is that we have declared that this group of people is under us, and they have to work their way up to normal, and that's us putting it there. It's nothing that they've done.
Right.
Because we enslaved them. Like, let's get back to the honest truth. We
Yeah.
enslaved them, right?
No, I know.
So
I very directly, I mean, in terms of family history.
yeah, I mean,
I know that my family had a plantation.
Exactly.
And that's hard to admit.
totally. And so, I mean, and there are people who recognize that and don't own it, you know, so.
Right. When did you see it?
I mean, bro, it was when I was in the store, the grocery store, and, like, saw my...
That was the first time?
Saw my mom. I mean...
And how old were you?
Yeah, that was, like, the first time that I noticed. In a way that, like, my mom was talking about. Because my mom is a huge advocate for all this stuff. So... she was talking about all of it, and then I think I became aware of it when I saw that. But, bro, I mean, it wasn't until, like, I was in, like, middle school and saw, like, the way that white kids treated other kids, you know? And, like, even just there was, like, that, and then, like, there was overt racism, and then there was the, like, under-the-surface racism where people were like, whoa, like, you're good at math? Crazy.
Yeah.
You know? And, like... or when, like, there was just so many opportunities where, like, the Asian community kicked me out because I wasn't Asian enough. Like, I went to a 60% Hispanic, 20% Filipino, you know, 20% the rest, white, black, that kind of thing. The rest was that, and then, like, 5% biracial or something in that mix. But, like, I wasn't Asian enough for the Asian kids. And they were like, nah, you're white. And I was like, what? Like, why do you get to dictate that, you know?
Right.
Well, and then I went to Tulane, and then Tulane was like, nah, you're Asian. Like, you're not white enough. You're only half white, you know? So I think that it was built into the contexts, but...
So you've experienced it very directly.
Yeah, I mean,
and
you know,
seen
I've
where
been,
you've experienced
I've
it
been
very
pulled
directly.
over by... like, I've been pulled over with black friends in the car, and I've seen that treatment where they're, like, you know, immediate hands on the wheel, and... it's like a really tense encounter, and I was like, whoa, like, chill, what's going on? You know, and they're like, we're pulled over. Like, I was dumb. And I was like, oh, shit, like, you have to worry about this, you know?
Wow.
Everything was fine, but I just was like, oh.
Right.
I realized, like, in those scenarios, I'm chilling, you know? The cop's going to chat with me. We're going to talk. At most, I get a ticket. Whatever. You know? Minor inconvenience, whereas for them, they're like, man, do I get killed today? That's what's on the docket, you know. It's crazy. So
dang, dude.
That was that. So my next question was, when did you become aware of, like, what did the last 4 weeks look like for you in this? Like, when did you kind of become aware that there was
Okay, so it happened to me very suddenly because I decided to take a week and a half break from Instagram. I was done with social media and just stuff going on in my life. I just needed to step away. So I get back on social media.
How very four of you. Just kidding.
You know what? The camera can't see me getting upset. I was ready to fight.
The camera didn't see John take a swing at me.
Yeah. So I get back on. It was like a baseball bat to the face. It was very apparent that, like, suddenly the entire social climate had changed.
Turned black. Just kidding. The black square.
Wait, so I can make the mutt joke. No. I can't make the mutt joke, but
you saw the black square.
Oh,
Instagram went black. You moron.
I was like, bruh. Now I get you.
No, literally turned black. People's
yeah, dude. The entire suddenly people were posting black squares, and I was like, what is happening? But it was a couple days before that. And
okay.
everyone was like pissed off, and my social media feed was filled with both sides.
If you don't mind, like, taking the volume down
Yeah.
slightly. Sorry, it's just nighttime for our listeners.
My social media feed was filled with both sides because my dad's fairly liberal, my mom's fairly conservative, and I'd like to think I'm somewhere in the middle. So I had both people pointing out the rioting and the looting and the shit was on fire, and then I had the other side of, you know, people saying like, it's about damn time, like, justice for George Floyd, you know, look at how this man was brutally, you know, murdered. And so, yeah, it was very overwhelming for me because for a lot of people, it was a gradual, like, okay, whoa. But for me, it was all at once because I jumped in, like, maybe 3 or 4 days after the whole thing was really boiling, you know? Yeah, so it was very sudden for me. What about you? You're on social media.
I mean, like, what was when were you like, okay, I'm on board with Black Lives Matter? Like, what was that process like?
And
speak to it as much as you want.
I'd say before this, I was probably on the wrong side of it, of the wrong understanding and wrong belief of it. Like,
and tell us what that process looked like.
Yeah,
you know?
So from a young age, taught Christianity that, you know, everyone is equal in you know, God's eyes and created equally. And, like, so when I saw a sign that said Black Lives Matter, it was almost like someone was standing on to my brain, my little 6-7-year-old brain, it was like someone was standing on the street with a sign that said water is wet and protesting that. And I was like, yeah, no shit, Black Lives Matter. Like, why are we having to protest that? And so I disregarded it because I thought, why would someone have to argue that water is wet? I know that there are people who want to argue that water is wet, and you can...
Or if you get into the science that water's not actually wet. Sorry. No, we're talking about racism.
But yeah, so just disregarding it for a long time and not understanding that there was real, like I genuinely had a lot of opinions telling me that it was people taking advantage of, you know, they're wanting to, you know, oh, we're oppressed, and so we can take advantage of that and get things that other people can't, kind of stuff. And just a very twisted understanding of, not twisted as in, I mean, just like distorted. It wasn't accurate. And so just recently, I think with this whole thing, I've been at like, okay,
when did it shift?
Sense. I can't tell you when it shifted.
Yeah.
But I know for sure, like, this whole thing made me realize, okay, this is something I have to be in drive, not neutral.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
I have to hit the gas and, like, not just be like, okay, I'm not in reverse anymore, which was, for a second, I was slowly in reverse. I thought it was something to be feared. Now I get it, and I'm like, okay, this is something that if you're a Christian, if you really believe in, you know, the teachings of Jesus, you believe in equality, and you believe that Jesus is there for the oppressed and for the poor and for all that stuff. And so when this kind of stuff comes up, you gotta get off your ass, you know? So for me, this was a big... This
is who Jesus came for.
Dude, yeah,
Jesus came for the oppressed.
Protest, doggy. Yep. Like,
I mean, he flipped tables in the Bible. Like,
that's why I'm like,
Jesus was a.
He made a whip. My guy made a whip. He was angry, and yet he was sinless. Yeah. Anyways.
So you went to a protest?
Did go to a protest. I think it was before that I understood. Like, I'm not woke, but I understood where I was on this whole thing, and that there is a different, there's a wrong side to be on this, and I was on the wrong side before this whole 2020, you know, George Floyd thing happened. Like, so I think it really shifted as I kind of shut up. And I now know that what I was doing was probably overwhelming to them, but I reached out to a couple of my black friends, and I was like, yo, I have no idea what's happening. Help me understand your perspective on this, because I'm getting a lot of white opinions. a lot of people that are not in this whole thing. What's your thought on this? And them being like, watch the video, understand what happened, understand the history of this. Like, here's my perspective. And people that I'm like, how could you ever see this as a threatening person? I think you know who I'm talking about. Like, yet they say that they are perceived as a threat because of the color of their skin.
Yeah.
Shocked me. Like, I just didn't see it. I didn't realize it. And so once I understood that there are people who see them different, they're black people differently than I do. And that the answer is not to be passive and just be colorblind, but the answer is to be anti-racist, to be, to self-evaluate, pull a Michael Jackson and look at the man in the mirror. I'm not talking about I'm not going to bring in all the other Michael Jackson stuff not that. I'm talking about the song Man in the Mirror.
Oh my gosh.
That could be so pulled out of context. But
Great song.
great song. Yeah. And I mean, it starts with me. So, that was the big shift for me with this.
And we are racist.
Yes. I'm a racist.
And we have to actively combat it to not be racist.
I am learning more and more how to be more Christ-like and anti-racist. I would bring you Jesus in this conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree.
I don't think that really you can find...
Yeah, I mean, my heart is so frustrated over the silence that I see from the church in this country.
Yeah.
Like, we should be on the front lines, pushing for justice, and there's scenario after scenario where the church is silent. So I think it's imperative that Christians are in support of this. I think that the thing that Taylor posted that I saw was that Christianity and racism cannot coexist.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me that people in this country are okay with that. Like, some people are like, yeah, it's cool. As long as you're the color of my skin, we can be Christians together.
But it's also not crazy to me because...
And that's where I draw the line.
Considering that in the Civil War, people used the Bible to justify
that's true.
Slavery.
Yep.
Which I don't even understand. How far out of context do you have to Frankenstein a verse to really confirm that kind of stuff?
And that's where I draw the line between religion and faith. I think that religion can get nasty really fast. Like, when you put your religion ahead of the fact that God calls us to love everyone, like, love everyone.
Let's talk about the Pharisees.
Like, it's just crazy to me that, like, people can be like, but do I have to love black people? Do I have to love Muslims? Do I have to, like, insert whatever?
People from Samaria.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, to bring it back
Bible
full circle,
examples, yeah.
do I have to love the Samaritan?
Right. Yes.
And it's like, yeah. God's like, I'm sorry, did I stutter?
Right,
Love
yeah.
everyone.
And what's funny is people in the Bible even got that wrong. Like,
Exactly.
there's that one verse where they're approaching the city, and like I think that this city was like Jesus was wanted in this city or something like that. And then one of the disciples is like,
should we go in there?
we should burn it down. And I just can't imagine the face that Jesus was probably pogged
In that
at
face,
him.
like,
He just
He's like, sorry,
have you been listening at all this whole
Let
time?
me rub my ears. Did I hear you correctly?
I feel like it's not in the Bible, but he gave him a brain duster, like a smack upside the head. Just, have you not been listening the whole time, dude?
Oh my gosh.
No, burn this city down.
I mean, and the thing that I'll circle back to is you and I are also guilty of that, for sure.
Yeah.
We are not perfect. We don't love, but all you can do is keep actively pursuing it. So, final question, just as we wrap up, because it's late night.
Yeah, I realize how that is.
Do you have any next steps that you're moving towards?
Yeah.
If you want to be thinking, I can go, unless you want to go.
You go first. I'd be curious to hear yours, because I do have to think a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So, one, just to call out what you were saying earlier, I think one of the things I want to do is offer myself as a resource as a white person who's willing to educate and answer questions. Because I think that it's really hard to be a black person among this, because you're experiencing legitimate racial trauma. Like, what you're experiencing when you're watching a black person die on national television, be killed, and, like, the people get away with it is, like, that is genuine trauma.
Yeah.
So I think, like, my thing to white people is, like, while our black community is like, experiencing this racial trauma, please don't reach out and ask questions. Not to call you out, but, like they have they are trying to process. They're trying to experience all this. Like,
Yeah.
if you're looking for education, ask your friends on social media that are like white friends that are posting stuff, and try to work together. And I'm gonna offer myself as a resource. So if you have questions for me, listeners, like, please reach out. Again, I'm no professional, but I am, like, I did 4 years of work in activism at my college and that kind of thing. Had like a really intense training experience with all of that stuff. So I by no means have all the answers, but I'm willing to take first stab at it
Right.
and like educate ourselves together, just so that I take some of the strain off of my black brothers and sisters, you know. And then two, I think that I was praying a lot about this. Like the first week of it, when George Floyd was murdered and then the protests happened, I was like reeling. I was like, oh my God, literally, oh my God. Like the country, the brokenness in this country is too big. It is too big. I can't get a handle on it. I can't even look at it. Like, I don't understand. So for a week, I was just like, mind was blown, you know? And I was like, what do I do? What's how do I scale this mountain? How do I even touch the mountain? How do I even start to like access this mountain? And I was like, God, you need to give me a handhold. And one of the things he pointed to was like, CA Students was a huge place where CA Students is like the church group that John serves at, and I went through as a
high school and middle school's ministry.
Yeah, exactly. There we go, perfect. And I realized like a lot of my racial awareness, ethnical understanding, injustice stuff came during those years. Like that was super formative for me, and it happened because my parents were involved. It happened because my parents were pushing that, but like. Imagine being a kid in those groups, particularly a person of color, and not having a resource like that. And so I want to start to offer some resource. So I'm speaking with our lead pastor to try to figure out how I can partner with him to build something like that, just so that people have even, like what we just talked about. What's your ethnic understanding of yourself? When did you first experience injustice? How do you allow your personal identity to engage the world? Like 3 great questions that I think people are not even asking in those at CA Students. And there are so many students that are just unaware of it, you know, that are either people of color, biracial, mixed, something that just can't even, they don't have no framework for it, you know. No fault of their own, but I just want to provide a place for that. So that's kind of my next step, but was praying about it a lot. So if you're a student and you've listened all the way through this, that's my next project. Please get in touch if that's something that's something that works on it. I think that John is going to help me out with it.
Am I qualified?
I mean, we just had this conversation, right?
Right. Yeah.
That qualifies you. Yeah. No, you're just a little further along in the journey.
True.
Right.
Okay, for sure.
You know how to ask these questions.
I think I'm still an idiot.
Well, that's all it takes, bro. Ask the questions.
I know.
You know? That's all it takes.
If I can transition to
what are you doing?
My answers for that question. I mean, a couple things is I want to keep my ear to the ground about this, what's happening. I've been following a couple more, you know, of these organizations that have talked about this that have been on this page for so long. And, like, just listening a little bit more, paying attention to these new, you know, to these events and understanding what's happening and not just, like, that's not a meme, scroll by. You know what I'm saying? Like, honestly, though, like, being a little more attentive and I think also, like, you know, you were saying don't reach out to your black brothers and sisters right now because they're overwhelmed. I think for me... Or
reaching out to them with love, I mean, sorry.
Say again?
To be like, I support you, I'm with you. But not, like, making them have to do the work to respond.
Right,
sorry.
Because the resources are already out there. Yeah, they've been out there for a long time.
Good point.
Like, you know, and I'm realizing that more and more. It's like that YouTube is just a
breeding ground.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of dumb shit on YouTube. I'll be honest. Sorry, Lindsay, but
it's okay. I said shit too. Don't worry.
Okay, good. Yeah. So being a little more in touch with current events as far as these kind of things, and like activism. I do. What was the other thing? Oh, you know, and this is something I've started to do, having those uncomfortable conversations with people that I don't necessarily agree with or understand.
That's a good point.
Because those conversations have been especially the hardest with my mother, and I love her, but I just have these conversations where it's like, Mama, you grew up in the South and in San Diego. Do you really understand what it's like to be feared for the color of your skin? Like, you know, it's stuff like that. And she's open to listening, but she definitely has very strongly the opinion of the other side. So, not the other side as in just very conservative, you know?
Totally.
Like colorblind is the answer. And it's like, no, like.
All lives matter.
Yeah, and I think, right, which, that.
But it is kind of cool that you came from that side, so you can kind of be like, okay.
I get why you say that.
I hear why you say
that.
that.
It doesn't. It not only does it not help, it makes things worse.
Exactly.
So.
Bro, but all cancers matter.
Right. Oh yeah. Just because your house is on fire, I should advocate for my house. You know, all houses matter. It doesn't matter if your house is on fire.
Wait, but is your house on fire, John?
No, my house isn't on fire. But my house matters.
Poggers.
Gank my lane, even though I have pride.
Excuse us. No, that was a bad example. You want to gank a lane with prio.
All right. I'm still learning. When you don't have lane prio is when you're getting your butt kicked and they're pushing.
Yeah, and then you just curl up under tower and you. Whatever.
And then you gank them.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. I get it. Anyways,
you may want to cut that.
Yeah, I definitely will.
We'll see.
And then I think.
I mean, those are good points. You want to wrap up?
Yeah, just learning, reading books, reading the resources, finding the stuff that's out there that already exists. Like right now, I'm reading your dad's book, Being White, the one that talks about racial reconciliation, and that's been really interesting and really eye-opening, and realizing, oh shoot,
Being White in a Multi-Ethnic World by Doug Schaub.
That's the whole title.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great book.
The in a multi-ethnic world is in small letters, and so I forget to add that part to the title. But yeah, that's the whole thing. So that's what I'm doing and learning, and I'm open to learning new things.
There are so many resources out there. Please take a look. A link in my bio is to a page that's just full of resources.
And
Petitions
in the YouTube
to
video, we're
sign.
gonna throw some podcasts and books.
Organizations to donate to.
Yeah.
So we had a thing at CA this weekend that was like about the movement or about all this. CA was doing like a prayer walk, protest type of deal. And my dad was preaching or like had a moment in the pulpit, and he was like, let this not be a moment, but a movement. And the way that you make it a movement is by making it last more than a week. So.
Dude, your dad is so punk rock.
He did it, and he had his fingers like this, and he was like, let's go. You can't see my fingers, but I did the...
You did the rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly, rock and roll. Let's go. But I think that's the big thing, so I can leave you with something. It's let's figure out what it's going to take for you to take the next steps to make this into a movement, because it's going to take everybody.
Yep.
It's going to take everybody. But yeah, if you're a CA student and you're interested in learning more about your ethnic identity, how that interacts with the world, please reach out. Any momentum helps me and John, because I'm definitely dragging him into this project.
Even though I feel unqualified, because
I'm
game. It'll help.
Because I'm about to get married, and somebody's gonna need to run with it when I get married.
Oh, right, yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I mean, this has been Just Janky. It was a little more of a serious topic, but we totally felt it was necessary, and we're going to figure out where we're headed next. But please email us with questions. We'd love to take any questions. I'm going to start, posting on my Instagram, asking if people have questions about this thing or want to get educated, want a FaceTime call to understand what's going on, how do I get engaged, what's next, do we abolish or defund the police? All these hard questions I'm willing to take a stab at with you. So let me know.
Yeah, I think we're both kind of thinking not go back in the direction, but we keep going in the direction of just talking about what's going on in life.
I mean, we literally set up
This was just a much more serious topic. Very
but
relevant.
We'll keep going. I mean, that's the thing is we're serious and we're not serious and we're dumbasses, and we talk about Kim Jong-un's daughter too. So.
Right. Oh yeah.
You're so dumb. With her toast in her mouth,
North Korean mommy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we'll set up a little table in the backyard and have a conversation. So tune in. Our email is justjanky3@gmail.com. That's justjanky, the number 3 at gmail.com. John and I both have Instagrams that we'll plug, and we'll put a lot of resources in it. So we'll catch you next week.
Tell in the comments, like, comment how much you miss Aiden.
Yeah, exactly.
And how cute his butt is.
Try to get him back in with us.
Don't pressure him. Don't be all over his butt. But just let him know he's loved.
I'm just kidding.
He's loved.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, we appreciate anybody who listens all the way through to this.
Yeah, seriously.
So, all right. Next week.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.